According to the United Nations Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights, the corporate responsibility to respect requires businesses to avoid and address any adverse human rights impacts with which they are involved. It applies to all businesses of all sizes in all situations. It is an international norm of expected conduct. In order to know and show that they respect human rights, businesses should have in place a policy commitment to respect human rights, an ongoing process of human rights due diligence, and processes to enable the remediation of business-related human rights harms. Human rights due diligence needs to cover different types of adverse impacts on all internationally recognized human rights. This includes impacts that the business causes, impacts that the business contributes to, as well impacts impacts that are directly linked to business operations, products, or services through business relationships. This focus on impacts in supply chains and other business relationships is an integral part of human rights due diligence. Actual and potential human rights impacts should be avoided and addressed through human rights due diligence, which includes 4 key steps. 1. Assessing human rights impacts. There is no single right methodology for businesses to assess their human rights impacts. What is essential is that all human rights are taken into consideration and that a human rights-based approach is applied in the assessment. Companies might, for example, integrate human rights into environmental and social impact assessment, or undertake assessments that focus exclusively on human rights. 2. Integrating and acting upon the findings. Responses to the findings in the impact assessment need to be integrated into relevant policies and practices across the business, such as human resources, health and safety, security, procurement, and so on. Ensuring organizational capacity for human rights management through training and allocation of adequate time and budget is essential. 3. Tracking and monitoring responses. Tracking and monitoring the effectiveness of responses should be an ongoing process. It is important to involve affected right holders and other stakeholders, for example, by establishing a joint community company monitoring team. 4. Communicating and reporting. Information about due diligence processes and impacts should be publicly communicated in ways that are accessible, provide sufficient and relevant information, and that do not pose risks to rights holders or others such as human rights defenders, journalists, or trade unionists. In sum, effective and ongoing human rights due diligence is the practical way in which companies can ensure their respect for human rights.